Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. Today I thought I'd delve into a little bit of our data about heating. There must be lots of people out there thinking about going electric for their heating, whether it be heat pumps, infrared panels, but basically just getting away from fossil fuels and going with electric. And whichever choice of technology you use, the thing that you're going to be thinking about is it going to save me any money? How much is it going to cost? How many kilowatt hours am I going to use? So the more data you can accumulate, the more data you can understand, especially about what other people are doing, if that's an appropriate sized home for you, etc., then you can use that data to help you appreciate what your plan is and how to implement it. So I thought I would delve into some data specifically. It's the end of the month, it's the beginning of December now, it's the time that I would normally gather all my November data together and present it all to you, and I'm doing that. But while I look at my spreadsheets, I'm looking and analysing it myself. So I thought I would share some of that analysis that I'm actually doing. So to start with, heating. So I looked at my total heating cost, as in kilowatt hours, for this month, and it was 199 kilowatt hours is what I've consumed in November for all of our electric heating appliances. Compared to last November, which was 235 kilowatt hours, that sounds completely appropriate because my gut feeling is it was colder last November than it was this November. We had quite a mild November. Despite having snow, despite having some frost and some frozen weather, the number of days that it's been really cold has been less. So it sort of makes sense, but if I delve into the data, there's a slightly different story to tell here, so that's what I wanted to share with you. Looking at my spreadsheet, which records each individual heater, how many kilowatt hours it's consumed on a daily basis, looking at all of November and totaling each column up so I know the total kilowatt hours per device for the entire month and comparing it to last month, there are a couple of things that stand out. So again, 236 last month total, 199 this month. But if I go through the individual devices, starting with dehumidifier on the right-hand side of my chart here, dehumidifier is what I use upstairs in our bedroom. We've got one north-facing room that's more damp than the others, and if we don't have the heating on overnight, if we don't have the heating on continuously, and if the temperature drops, it just seems to get very humid in there. It's the most humid room that we have, probably because there's three people in there. There's me, Susan, and Cracker at night, and we have the windows and doors shut. Now, that's because Cracker is very sensitive to noise, so we won't get a good night's sleep unless he sleeps well. No, we don't leave him in the kitchen. He sleeps with us. So there's specific reasons why we enclose the room, but because we enclose the room, because it's north-facing, we do get more damp in there and more condensation. So there's different ways of looking after that, whether it's airing the room, opening the windows in the morning, having the heating on longer, but one of the solutions is a dehumidifier. So where it's not cold enough to have the heating on continuously because we prefer a cool room, we can actually run a dehumidifier which won't heat the room up too much, but which will take the humidity out, and that helps resolve it. So it's in those cold days, but where it's not cold enough to have the heating on continually overnight, that's when we use the dehumidifier. Anyway, 6 kilowatt hours is all we used in November, but that's exactly the same, 6 kilowatt hours as it was last November. So we've got consistent use of that device and how we're achieving not having any condensation on the windows in the morning and not having any potential damp forming. So yeah, 6 kilowatt hours is consistent. So that's a story to tell. I'm obviously using it consistently for how to do it. It is successful. We don't have any condensation on the windows in the morning. We're managing it well, and it is only taking 6 kilowatt hours. So the next device, again, I treat that as heating because I'm using that in place of a heater. So it's the same sort of thing. The next device is our guest room. So we've got the guest bathroom and guest bedroom. So we don't normally have heat on in those rooms when we don't have people in the house. So when we have guests, we use it. Last year, we used 7 kilowatt hours for the bathroom, 8 kilowatt hours for the guest bedroom, which is using a combination of heaters. Sometimes we use a portable radiator, but now mostly we're using an infrared mirror panel, which is only 300 watts, but we leave it on long enough and that heats the room lovely. So this year we used 4 for the bathroom and 5 for the guest room. So yes, we've used slightly less this year. We've been less sociable. We've had less guests over, I'm presuming. So, there's not much of a story to tell there. The infrared panel that we have, which is in our cloakroom, this is a really interesting one. So if we look at last year, our cloakroom used 21 kilowatt hours, which is an immersion-fed radiator, 300 watts. The infrared panel is a top-up device in that cloakroom as well. So we have 2 300-watt devices. There's, again, a glass mirror. It's a smoked glass mirror panel. in the cloakroom, infrared 300 watts. The way it works is our little hand towel radiator that's in the cloakroom isn't big enough. So the immersion heats up, it gets to temperature, it gets to its max temperature, and it cuts out. And you think, well, it must be heating the room then. But because the radiator is so small, there's not enough heat coming off that content of the radiator to actually heat the room. So we use the infrared panel to boost it. One option would be to improve the size of the radiator, but until it actually needs doing, the infrared panel actually works really, really well. So what we do is we use a home assistant automation and a wireless temperature sensor to monitor the temperature in there. When it drops below 20 degrees, the infrared panel comes on and tops it back up to 21. Then it goes off again. Last year, I had those parameters of when it came on and when it went off set differently, and that room was very, very cozy. I was deliberately pushing the limits of how to heat that room, and we were having it at 24, 25, 26 degrees in there. It was like going in a sauna sometimes. It was lovely and warm. It was a lovely, I wouldn't call it a respite, but it was a contrast between the rest of the house, which was around 20 degrees. This year, I fine-tuned that automation and brought it back down so the room is more constant with the temperature of the house, so down to 20 degrees. And that's evident in the kilowatt hours. The cloakroom, 21 kilowatt hours last November, the infrared 24, so a total of 45 kilowatt hours to heat the cloakroom last year. This year, we've used 15 for the radiator and 7 for the infrared panel, so a lot less. That's a total of 22 kilowatt hours versus 45. So half. We have halved the heating cost. Now, I think this is an interesting point, and this is part of the analysis. Why is that? The difference is that I heated the room more. But you'd think once it gets to temperature and it turns off, you'd end up using the same energy. Clearly, it doesn't work that way. Clearly, the higher the temperature, the more that heat is coming out of the room and dissipating and then reheating up again. So that room's not maintaining and keeping that heat in. If the room temperature is the same as the cloakroom temperature, as you open the door, etc., then you got no heat loss or heat change as you go in and out. So I guess that's what it is. It's the cost of overheating a room, and that's a good lesson to learn in this data. So if you've got temperature differences in your home and you've got big temperatures in one room and lower temperatures in another, then if that's a thoroughfare and if you're going to be opening and closing that door, you're going to be using a lot more energy to heat that room. So there you go. That's the cloakroom. The ensuite. The ensuite's an interesting one again. 26 kilowatt hours for both last November and this November. So our usage is exactly the same. I thought it would be more because I felt this November I was being freer with leaving that on for longer. The way our bathroom and ensuite radiators work, again, they're just towel rails. They're on a smart plug, wired in. They're 300 watts. Rather than being temperature sensing and being left on, they're on just a timer. So they come on at, say, 2 in the morning. So the time we get up, the room's lovely and warm. So it's just time to come on to heat the room sufficiently to be lovely and warm when we want to use it. Then it goes off during the day, and then it comes on again in the afternoon to anticipate our needs of using that room as we're getting ready for bed, etc., in the evening. So it's warm when you need it, not warm all day. I was actually thinking that with our extra home battery that we've added another 15 kilowatt hours of home storage battery. I thought I was being freer with our electricity, freer with our heating and heating it more. And it feels really, really comfortable now. I've got the right number of hours at the right time, so we're anticipating our needs for the heat, and it feels lovely in there. So I thought I was adding some extra warmth this year. I was expecting it to be higher, but lo and behold, it's exactly the same as last year. So obviously, I'm managing that room to the comfort level that we want, and it's working. So that is what it's taking, 26 kilowatt hours. Now, the interesting thing about that is the comparison to the cloakroom. If the cloakroom was using 22 kilowatt hours and the 45 kilowatt hours last November, that gives you a good ballpark of keeping the right temperature and how many kilowatt hours we're going to use. But the cloakroom is a tiny size. It's like a third of the size of our ensuite or bathroom. So to see that we're using 26 kilowatt hours and not a lot more goes to show that turning it off during the day is having a positive effect. That we're using less kilowatt hours to heat the space size because we're only heating it for the hours we need. Where the cloakroom, because we want it in the morning, in the evening, And during the day, it's our downstairs toilet. We're more active and we're around downstairs. So that's the room that we need available all the time, and it needs to be nice and warm. So I found that very, very interesting that it's clearly making a saving by turning it off. And I think that's evidenced in the data by the fact that our ensuite is only using 26 kilowatt hours, but the cloakroom downstairs, on for a lot longer, is using 22. So that leads me on to the Toshiba. The Toshiba is our air-to-air heat pump heating system. So that's an 8 kilowatt inverter outside with 3 indoor units in our main lounge, main bedroom and hallway. So the main core of the house. And they can be used to heat other rooms by just leaving doors open and the heat goes through. So that's effectively what we do with those. We heat the core of the house and let that heat spread through. And that works extremely well. We're very, very happy with that. Again, we don't leave the heating on. It comes on timer in the morning, so the house is lovely and warm when we first wake up and first get up. It stays on during the day. Initially, I used to turn it off while we went for walks in the morning. I've stopped that now and become more comfortable with the heating in the house. And we leave it on basically all day and turn it off when it either is too warm or basically we're starting to get ready to go to bed, etc. So 144 kilowatt hours last month, 136 kilowatt hours this month. That's very interesting because, again, I felt that we've been more liberal with our heat. We've used it more. That's how it feels. And yet we've used pretty much the same sort of heat. And if it was colder last year than it was this November, then we've only made a marginal saving from 144 to 136 kilowatt hours. So again, I'm finding that interesting that my perception was I was being more liberal with our heating, and we haven't actually had any kilowatt hour increase. But here's the big one then. So none of this is adding up because it's basically saying last November we used the same amount of kilowatt hours to heat our house as we did this year. But I know full well it was colder last November. My data that I've recorded shows that there was more freezing days. So my memory isn't failing me. It was colder. So how have we got away with using the same number of kilowatt hours? And the answer is in the very final one on the left-hand side, logs. So our log burner in the lounge is something that we use sparingly this year. Last year I said I was trying to use less logs, and we did by about 100. We used 100 less logs throughout the year. But it wasn't really successful. I was hoping to use it a lot less. So if this year we've got more battery storage and I'm feeling freer with being able to use it to heat my home, and therefore it's working more successfully and the heat is more, it's doing the job. It's not necessarily more effective. It's just working and working really well and I'm comfortable with it. Then we haven't felt the need to light the fire. The log burner is perfect for the sort of day where you wake up, it's freezing cold, you haven't had the heating on time, let's say you made a mistake and you want to light the fire, feel cozy, it's miserable outside, you're not going to go out when it's freezing, so you light the fire, it gets nice and warm in the lounge, you sit and watch some TV, I don't know, watch a Christmas movie or something, snuggle up, and you don't feel like going outside much, and that heat permeates throughout the house. You don't need much else heating. So last year, we supplemented our electric heating with 124 logs burnt. So 124 logs in November last year, just 10 this November, just 10. So that's a significant change. That's like a 90% change in what we've been using on logs. So that sort of explains why the electric heating is the same as last year, despite it being colder last year. But the analysis of our heating is, I like it. It's telling me that it's working for us and we're consistently using our heating in the same way for good effect, and we're using a consistent number of kilowatt hours. So for this November, that's 199 kilowatt hours this November, 236 kilowatt hours last November. The cost for that, let me flick across to our other spreadsheet. So excluding the export money that we're receiving for exporting energy on an export tariff and a deemed fit tariff from last year, the bill just for the energy this November in total was £52.14. So that's for charging our electric car, heating the house, heating the hot water, running the house. It's everything. It's all of our energy for every electric need. We don't have gas, we don't have oil, we don't use petrol, don't use diesel. It's all of our fuel needs and running our cars as well. £52.14 this November. Last November, £50.23. So we've actually used £2 more this year, and that includes the standing charge. Just for interest, if we were on we are on a fit tariff for one of our solar arrays. So we received £7 fit tariff for what we generated. But our actual exported energy this month that we got paid for, 15 pence a kilowatt hour, was £30.30. We really have had a cheap November winter bill. So I hope you found that little bit of analysis useful. It's the sort of thing that I go through with my spreadsheets just by default. I look at the numbers, I start writing them down, I compare them to last year, to last month, just to see what's going on and look for anomalies. What's going on? I'm always looking for, what happens if your heater's not working properly, or I'm doing something wrong, or something that I've changed is working really well. You want confirmation of it. It's a really good thing to record data so you can actually have a look and see what's going on, rather than just guess and do it ad hoc all the time. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed the stats. And if you like this sort of thing, let me know in the comments what you think. And I'll do more ad hoc blogs on the analysis of what I see in my data if that interests you. Thanks again. See you again soon. Bye for now.